Get that going. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So what I want to do here after this brief introduction is simply just do a buyer consultation as if you guys are the buyers. All right, so let's pretend you're family, maybe we're family and we're buying a house together or something like that. But I just want to kind of walk through it virtually and what we're doing. I think all of you have been through buyer consultation classes, so I know you have a pretty decent idea of what we're trying to do with this, but just some of the little quirks and things virtually that we've run into that make it a little bit different online than in person. So first of all, you want to make sure to ask what kind of platform that they're comfortable with. It seems like Zoom is what everyone's adapting to right now. It is fairly intuitive. It's easier than, to me, it's easier than Skype and some of the others. We talked about this at the sales meeting. The Google Meet is very simple. I think that's a super easy way to do it. But if they don't use Google Chrome, it usually has them downloading something to their computer. And some people I've tried to talk to have had trouble with that. I do think it's very important to try to do a virtual video meeting and not do this over the phone because there are these slides and stuff that we want to look through. And, we've done phone call buyer consultations for years and years and years. But for some reason, and not many of us have really ever adopted doing the video meetings, me included. I think partly just because you're always worried about, hey, is everybody going to know how to do this? Are they going to know how to do the virtual meeting? Are they comfortable with it? Are they not comfortable with the camera being on? All those things. Well, through this pandemic, I think the entire planet has understood and adopted that video meetings are just part of the future and part of the way we're going to do business. So that's kind of a good thing that I haven't run into anyone yet that was like, oh, no, I don't want to do a video meeting. Like, everyone gets it now. Like, that's just how things are done. So that's a good thing. All right. So like I said, I just want to kind of run through this like I would if you guys were buyers, and let's get started on it. All right. So, you guys pop on the screen like you normally did. And then I just say like, well, hey, Amy, Steven, Jackie, how you guys doing tonight?
We're great tonight. We're excited to be here and looking forward to looking at some houses today.
Okay. All right. Well, first, I want to go through the consultation with you and really understand what it is you guys are looking for in a property and why we're looking for property and talk to you about the process of buying a home. So I've got a little packet of information here I kind of want to walk through and just use as a guide for our conversation. But at any time, if you guys have any questions or something you want to ask, please do so. All right. So like I said, the first thing right now is I want to find out what's happening in the market, find out about you guys, what's going on, explore the home buying process with you, what it's like to work with a real estate agent and what it's like to work with me, and share some of that with you. And then, get you ready to search for your next home. So first things first, why are you guys looking to buy a home?
There's three of us all of a sudden.
Because there's three of you all of a sudden. Okay. All right. The family's all moving back together, and we need a house for all three of you to fit together. Okay. All right. So when is that happening?
3 months tops.
About 3 months. Okay. Good. All right. That's good. Pretty good timing. What's getting you guys back together?
Well, we're all going to be working from home now. So I need to sell my house, use that money towards more living arrangements with my family.
Okay. Okay, wonderful. So with working from home, you guys wanted to move back in together as family and all share the same roof. Okay, yeah, that's good. That's good. All right, let's, you got a fourth member of the family joining us here. Good. So Any other motivations or things we need to look out for when we're purchasing a home?
Yeah, I would like to have some space for a large garden, and it would be great to have a garage and a workshop if possible.
Okay. Okay. Oh, good. Let's talk a little bit more about that. So can you explain your garage a little bit more for us? Hi, Mary Ellen.
Well, as far as a garage, if there's 3 or 4 of us living there, we all have our own vehicles, so it would be nice to be able to have some covered space for it. And Stephen is sort of a mechanic, so he wants to have a place to do woodworking. And I'm a gardener, and Amy is a potter, so we just need some additional space in addition to housing space too.
Okay, Stephen, looks like you're being attacked there. All right. Good. Okay. Yeah, that's helpful, Jackie. I appreciate that. What other amenities are you looking for in the home?
I don't want it to be on a busy street because of the cat.
Busy streets. Okay. What about areas we're looking to live in?
Well, I'm not crazy about housing developments with cookie cutter houses.
Agreed.
You know, housing developments. Okay. What about general location in Western North Carolina?
I like anywhere within 20-ish minutes of Asheville, for the most part.
20 minutes of Asheville. Do we all agree on that as a family?
That would be ideal.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be good.
All right. Good. Good. Okay. Jackie, you talked about land a little bit. How much land are you thinking is enough for what you guys are looking for?
Well, I don't know about my other siblings, but I do, you know, I did used to have a farm operation, and I want to have a little small operation again. So a place where we can do a family garden, a big family garden, as well as another space to do flowers and herbs. I would say at least an acre for growing production. If we could get 5 acres, if it was reasonable with some woods and a stream, that would be great. If we could afford 50 acres,
Okay.
5 acres, maybe 2 acres at the least. What do the rest of you think?
Sounds good.
I think we need some place without deed restrictions, because I know you want to have like a little farm stand to sell the vegetables and the herbs from.
That would be good if we were on a you know, if we were accessible. Otherwise I could do it at market, but thank you for thinking about that. That's a good idea. I don't know if you guys want chickens, but that might be some places. I know they limit animals. I'm not a person and a cat person, but you know, if the rest of you want chickens or horses or something, that would, you know, probably change where Aaron would have to look for us.
Okay. Great. What about the house itself? What are we looking for in the house itself?
Looks like we need at least 4 bedrooms.
At least 4 bedrooms, right? Any particular style of home that we're interested in?
Well, I love passive solar, active solar, and if that is at all possible, but again, it's going to have to do with budget and what everyone else wants. I'd love it if there's a little cottage off to the side, and that could be my space.
Maybe some separate living areas. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else about the home that we want to keep an eye out for? Is it mostly about the land?
I would like a big front porch, a covered front porch.
Okay. All right.
Mary Ellen, what would you like if you were living in?
Well, I was thinking that I was playing the role of agent with Aaron, so I was just letting you all.
No. This is your family. You're buying a house with your family.
And
We're
this
all
is
gonna
my
live
family
together.
right here. These
You
three.
can't choose your family, Mary Ellen.
That's true. Well, I'm kind of a cat person, so I agree with you about having a space that's good for a cat. But if we have a whole lot of acreage, you know, we don't have to worry too much about the cat going in the street.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Chickens sound good. Are we talking in the city or outside of the city of Asheville?
I believe Steven said, you know, like within 20 minutes of Asheville.
Oh, okay. So we're out in the country, basically.
Probably with wanting the chickens and the acreage and.
Yeah, because you can have chickens in Asheville. You
Yep.
just can't have roosters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's chicken coop has to be like, is it 50 feet from the house?
I'm not sure.
They're actually not a lot of rules, except
Yeah.
for not having a rooster to keep people awake.
Yeah. That would drive me crazy. Okay. So overall then, talking through that a bit, we'll talk a little bit more about doing the home search. What's the general price range that we're looking in? And I'm sure we want to get it for as little as possible, but have you guys talked about putting monies together and what that price range looks like?
Yeah, Stephen has a lot and is willing to be quite generous for with the rest
so
of
nice.
us. So it's really, let's see what he's interested in putting in first.
All right, Daddy Bucks. Let's see how much you're willing to spend.
We'll probably keep it around 500,000.
500,000. Okay.
Seems reasonable for what we're looking for.
Yeah, I think so as well. And you know, if something came up that looked to be a perfect fit, but it was slightly over that, would that be okay if I at least send it to you?
If the other three are willing to pitch in.
Yeah, that would work.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know why. I was thinking we'd be more like 350, maybe 400 together. Is that doable?
I think that might be a little tough. Some land.
How much acreage are we talking? Did we say 50?
No. Well, we'd love 50, but less than 5, probably.
Less than 5. Okay.
At least 2.
Yeah. Okay.
Of course, we want a woods and a stream and privacy and everything else, but.
And a mountain view on a lake. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
Close to the ocean.
All right. Next thing.
In all honesty, I mean, what I'm looking for, and a couple of you know this, this is off the side, just a house and a piece of property that, for, my interest. And it is hard to find that for 350. So, and that would be 2 bedrooms, or, 3 would be a bonus. So I really think more realistic, but if we could go lower to meet Amy's needs, that would be good.
Okay. Okay. Well, great. So we've talked a little bit about the home itself. Let's talk about the market. What is y'all's opinion about the market that we're in right now for the type of property that you're looking at? I'm going to give you my opinion and talk about it, but I'd like to hear what your opinions are.
Well, I know that some homes are sold very quickly. Do you think we're in that market for what we're looking for?
Not really. We are in a market that is moving really fast right now. Anything that is on the market that is priced right and look good and shows well is selling pretty quickly. So yes, you're correct. We need to be ready to buy the second we see something, just so that we don't miss out on it. But in your price range and the type of property you're looking at, it's not going to be quite as fast of a market as it might be for just a regular single family home in the city. So you're a little bit lucky there in our area by being a buyer looking for your criteria. But overall, you're right. We need to be ready to buy immediately when we find something that fits, so that we don't lose it. Any other thoughts on the market from your perspective? Okay. The interest rates, Stephen, are historically low right now. Do you plan on doing a loan, or do you plan on paying cash, or how do you plan on doing this?
Gonna get a loan.
Going to get a loan? Okay.
Yeah.
Have you talked to a mortgage lender yet?
No.
Okay. So one of the first things I want to do is get you with a lender. I want to send you to Kristen Rogers with Movement Mortgage, and she can talk you through or have you go through an application process and talk you through the different loan products that might fit. For your particular interest, there might be some different loan products that would work for you guys. And so that's one of those first things, like Amy had said, being ready to buy will be very important, and making sure we've got the right loan product ready for you would be crucial to that. So I want to have you do that. I want to, if you'll bear with me just a second, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I'm going to pull up my email, and I'm going to go ahead and send you an email right now with Kristen's information. And if it works for you, I'll have her call you, Stephen, right after this as well. Does that work okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Let me pull this up here and see if I can share this back to you. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. This is taking just a minute.
So let me ask a question in setting this up. Have you sent the buyer paper copies of this also, or are we doing it entirely online?
Right now we're doing it all online.
Okay.
Yep, and I'm just playing this as if you guys were the buyers, so that you can, we can just truly see as if I would do it live,
Uh-huh.
So this is how I would do it. I would go ahead and get Stephen's email, type that in here. I would take Kristen's information, put that up here, and I'd do it with the lender. I would do it right there as we're live. Of course, I could do it after we're done, but I want to do it right now. It obligates the buyer, right? At this point, the buyer's like, okay, I guess I'll call her. Like they don't want to, just like you guys maybe felt it, maybe didn't, but you might be feeling like, well, I kind of want to stop him, but I'm a freight train coming, and you're going to have to interrupt me in order to stop it, right? So that's my theory, and kind of going through all that right there.
Would you discontinue the consultation until they've done this part?
No, I wouldn't. I want to still have this. I want to have this call. I've got their attention. I want to go through the rest of the call. I might not show them homes until they have that. But to me, it really it's really about their personality. If I get a good feeling from them, I get a feeling like they know what they're talking about. They're intelligent people. It sounds like they have the funds. I'm honestly going to treat that a little differently than someone that I'm just getting that instinct feeling like I'm not sure they're going to qualify, So it just depends on their personality on how I might adjust some of that.
Right? So Aaron, you like putting the responsibility on Stephen, the buyer, to get in contact with Kristen rather than asking permission for Kristen to call him?
I do both. I would do both. just like that. So I'm gonna send Steven the email with Kristen's application link, because basically she'll talk to you on the phone, but basically all she's gonna do is tell you to fill out the application, right? She's gonna be nice and talk to you, but then it's fill out the application. So I'm gonna send the application, and last night, that's exactly what I said to that buyer. I said, look, I'm gonna have her call you so she can talk to you a little bit, but honestly, she can't do anything until you fill out that application. And so you send them the link, and then I usually say, would you want me to have Kristen call you, or do you want to call her? And then I read that response. If they're like, well, I'll give her a call. I'm like, oh, you know what? Let me save you that. Like, when's a good time for her to call you? And like, again, just telling them what's going to happen, and making that connection. All right.
So I have a suggestion. When I first talked to Kristen, she gave me a couple of, I think a PowerPoint with a couple of slides on it, as well as some hard copy information. And it seems, wouldn't it be good to have, like, if they say, no, we haven't gotten she is in her company, and who you're going to forward her name to, just to let them be familiar with them. And if they've already been pre-approved, you can skip that slide.
No, I don't care if they've been pre-approved. I want them pre-approved with Kristen. And it's just like, I did this the other day with one of our agents, Rilla. I did a buyer consult just like this. Well, it wasn't a buyer consult. It kind of ended up being that way. But we were writing an offer together virtually, Rilla and I and the client, one evening last week. And that buyer was pre-approved with Wells Fargo. And Rilla hadn't said anything to them about it yet. And when we were on the phone, they had a pretty good rapport going with them online here. And I just told her, I said, you know what? You know what I call Wells Fargo? And she's like, what? And I said, I call them Wells No-Go. And she's like, and she's like, what do you mean? And I said, look, I'm just telling you, it's not a good place to go. Like, why did you pick Wells Fargo? Well, because we've been with them for 15 years, and, we did a mortgage with them 10 years ago, and I didn't know where else to go. And I said, great. I want you to call Kristen, at least get a second opinion. You can use whoever you want, but I need you to get that second opinion. So we got to be more forceful on that, because like with that deal, I'm just telling you, if they had gone with Wells Fargo, I mean, it's an absolute free-for-all, whether we close that on time or not. And nobody knows, and Wells Fargo is changing, their criteria on a daily basis. And so there's just no guarantees with those kind of companies. So it is, of course, their decision. If that buyer was like, well, I hear you, but I really want to use Wells Fargo, well, then there we go. That's what it is. But most of the time, they'll listen to at least getting that second opinion.
So I guess my question was, would it be advantageous at this point to have a slide in your PowerPoint to and her business, even though you're going to still connect them via email?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point. You could just put her contact info right here on this if you wanted. Yeah, sure. You could. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, Jackie. Yeah. That would make sense. Yeah. Because usually when you're doing this in person, you could just bring out her business card, hand that, right? That's why, I went to the email, and that's the virtual business card where you could just send it that way. But that's a good point. You could put it right here on the slide.
A visual that they could at least be introduced to it first and feel more comfortable about it, mm-hmm. if they've never heard of her before.
Well, and most of the time they won't have heard of her before. The people are going with you as their advisor. So if you advise something, they should go with you, and that's our job. So most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, people tend to, the good clients at least, they want your advice and they want to follow what you're telling them. And even when they don't, like, no, I'm really comfortable with this lender. Great, that's fine. But they still heard you say it, if nothing else, So you're still giving them that advice. All right. Good. All right, so we talked about our local market. We talked about that a little bit. All right. And then from here, we want to talk about the reasons to buy now. So in our conversation earlier, Stephen, you mentioned that you guys were going to be moving in together within at least 3 months. Is that a pretty hard date? Do we have to make that happen in 3 months or less, or what's the situation there?
I mean, there's definitely some flexibility. So, you know, I think that's just kind of an ideal time for all of us.
Okay. So the idea or the goal would be to close within 3 months, though?
At least find something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. So these next slides are talking about the importance of buying now. So we'll kind of go through these a little quickly because, like you just said, we're going to be on the hunt here pretty quickly. Obviously, interest rates are at really good times. It is a great time to buy right now. Interest rates are low. Prices are continuing to go up. Even during this pandemic, we're seeing prices continue to go up in our area. So that's it's a good reason to look at buying right now. All right. So again, we'll skip through these because again, they're looking at the importance of buying right now, and so we're going to get started on it. Amy, earlier you said you know, homes are selling fast, and yes, you're absolutely right. And here's a couple little images about that, and the importance being that we get approved with Kristen, and we're rocking and ready to go just as soon as we find the right property. And it's why I have the conversation with you now, so you don't get angry at me later if we're at the property and I'm like, hey, you guys, how do you feel about this? And you're like, we really like it. I think we might be interested in making an offer. And I say, okay, let's look at doing that. Let's sit down and let's get an offer in. I don't want you feeling like I'm being pushy in that situation, because I'm really not. I'm just looking out for your best interest, and that's to avoid this where, avoid this where we end up, you know, having the home sold out from under you to another buyer. So as soon as we find something that you really are interested in, we want to make sure that we get that offer in. Okay. Now, part of that is dependent on the property, and we also have our what's called the due diligence period. So I'm going to go over that with you in a little bit. But that period covers you for all extra research and things. So if you're saying we really like the property, but we really would have to research the soil or something for the farmland, that can be done during due diligence. So we really want to get the offer in first at that point. Okay. So are there any questions you guys have about the home buying process that I could answer for you? Nothing? We have the home buying down, huh? Okay. So that's fine. I still want to cover a few things with you. If you have any other questions, just let me know. But I always want to, bring up a couple of points when we get to this slide. I want to talk first about getting pre-approved, which we've talked about. We're going to go out and start looking at some property, looking at some homes. We're going to make an offer. That offer is going to be in writing. We use an electronic signature tool that we can email you the forms to get signed on your computer or even on your phone. Of course, we can do it in person by hand as well. But I do want to let you know we do have those electronic signature tools, which makes it quite a bit easier and faster for you to sign things. So we would do that. But I always like to point out the difference between reaching an agreement and a contract of sale. All right. So we'll make an offer. Typically in our area, we get a verbal counter offer, maybe by email. They'll say, hey, we're countering at X price. And that might go back and forth a little bit. And I'll help you with the negotiations on strategies during that time. But then we'll reach an agreement. Maybe the seller agrees to our last counter offer. I want to make the point to you now that just because they verbally agreed does not mean we're under contract. All right. So as soon as we get that verbal agreement, I need your help to get this signed as soon as possible. So again, that's where that electronic signature tool can come in handy, and I can send it to you. But when I call you up and say, hey, they've accepted that offer, I need you to stop what you're doing and sign these documents for me. I don't want you to feel like I'm being pushy at that point, because I'm telling you now, the reason is just because they verbally agreed doesn't mean they're legally obligated to sell it to you until they have signed. And so we've had moments where a seller verbally agrees and then a buyer, another buyer makes another offer and our buyer loses out because the other offer was higher. And I don't want to see that happen to you. So the quicker we can get the contract signed, the better off you are as our buyer. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
good. Another point I want to make is during our due diligence, like we were just talking about, you can do your home appraisal, home inspections, termite inspections, well inspections, soil inspections, septic inspections, any kind of test you want to do on the home or the property. That's our time to do that. All right. I want to jump off of this screen again real quick, and I want to share something else with you. Let's see here. That is not what I wanted to share with you. All right. Let's see here. Where is that? Okay. All right. What I'm sharing with you is some paperwork. I want to show you what the offer to purchase looks like. And I want to talk about the due diligence period and due diligence fee, like we were mentioning. So in our offer to purchase here for North Carolina, we have our due diligence fee and our earnest money fee. Due diligence fee is completely non-refundable during that, no matter what, if you decide to not buy the home anymore, that money is non-refundable. The earnest money is refundable as long as we terminate during the due diligence period, which is located here. So how long are those? Well, they're completely negotiable between buyer and seller. All right. How much money should you put down? It's completely negotiable between buyer and seller. All right. So, but generally, I'll give you some answers on these, because generally for the price range you're looking and what you're trying to do, your due diligence period should be probably at least 30 days to cover us on the appraisal. Depending on what other soil tests and things that you might want to do on the property, we'll have a discussion about that. But that period can be as long as you want it to be. It's just negotiated with the seller. Obviously, the shorter that period, the better for the seller. All right. And then our settlement date, typically right now, about a 45-day closing is common. Most good lenders can close in 30 days right now without a problem. But typically we're putting something like 45 days in there. Okay.
Aaron,
yeah.
Are those dates, timelines still accurate right now, or have those been kind of made longer during this period?
Oh, I've seen nothing. I've seen no delays, no nothing.
Fantastic.
On that. Yep. Haven't seen any problems whatsoever.
Cool.
Now, if I wanted to stick with Wells Fargo, instead of going with Kristen, would that make a difference in the timeline?
Not so much on your timeline. I mean, I certainly wouldn't give them 30 days. I'd give them more the 45, maybe. That's not always the problem. The problem is just them not closing and them pulling something with you at the last minute saying, hey, we need this document. And unfortunately, we've had problems with Wells Fargo directly and Bank of America and some of the other big companies that pull out certain criteria 2 days before closing and telling the buyer you no longer qualify for this loan. That's the problem. It's just customer service is non-existent.
That should be illegal.
That's the biggest problem. Yeah. Yeah. So your due diligence period, again, that's negotiable. How much due diligence, how much earnest money? I always like to tell buyers, these are totally negotiable. There is no rule on how much or how little due diligence money or earnest money you should put up. If you're buying a house for $500,000, you have the right to write a due diligence check for $500,000. Should you do that? Probably not. We'll talk about it. But my point is just to you that you know, it's negotiable. And if you're confident this is the right place you want to buy and you want to put up a larger due diligence money, that's fine. That's up to you. And it certainly shows the seller that you're more serious in the property. And same thing goes with earnest money. There's no set rule on how much that needs to be. Now, typically for your price range, if we're looking 300 to 500,000, typically we might see something like $500 or $1,000 in due diligence money, something like that at that price range. And maybe $2,500, $5,000 earnest money would be a good number for that. So that's kind of the money we need. Both of these will be applied towards your purchase price at closing, so they go towards your down payment. But those would be kind of the numbers I'd be planning on looking at, unless you wanted to do more. I think it's a really smart idea to do something like $10,000, $20,000 in earnest money, because we can protect that money up until this due diligence date. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. All right. Let me see if I can go back to our plan here. There we go. All right. Any questions so far on everything?
Nope.
No. Okay.
Aaron,
Yeah.
not as your buyer, but as your student, what would you do if at this point one of us said, oh, I have to run, I forgot I had another meeting, and they opted out of this buyer consultation? What would you do?
Right before the consultation, or
No, in the middle of it, or right before, but when you really wanted that person to be here, what would you do?
I don't know.
What can you do?
I mean, I would be polite and say, oh yeah, absolutely, go to your other meeting. You know, is there another time that we could step this back up again, later tonight or tomorrow? Like, I would just try to get a quick appointment with them again before they actually left the call.
But you wouldn't continue with the parties that are left.
Yeah, in that situation, I would continue with the parties that are left.
Okay.
Even if it's a husband, wife, and the husband had to go, and but the wife was like, but I want to hear the rest of this. I want to get through this. He's got to go, but I want to stick. Yeah, I think it'd be rude for us to be like, no, I'm not talking to you. I'm only going to talk to the husband. Like, that's not going to go well. So, so yeah, I would just be polite about it. It's not ideal. It's not what we want. I want to hear both sides of things. Just like the one I was doing last night, I had spoken with the wife a few times over the phone, and they're missionaries and stuff that I know, but I hadn't really ever talked to the husband before. And I had certainly asked that he be on the call, and he was, and it's a little bit different feeling. I have a little bit different idea of what's going on by talking with him as well as her. He's just a little bit different than I thought he was, in a good way, but, so it's definitely good to have everybody on the call. But to answer your question, I would continue if someone is willing to stick on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So now we switch to this page, and here I just like to say, look, purchasing property can be stressful. It can be a little bit scary at times, and negotiating a contract is a lot like playing a game. All right. There's different leverage points at different times for the buyer and the seller. It's something that it's hard when you're in the game yourself, when you're the player, you're the buyer, you're the seller. It's hard to see through your emotions, and you need an advisor there to help you negotiate and give you good, solid advice on the next terms. And a for instance would be, sometimes I work with a buyer that is really liking a property. And again, let me stop and say, I will give you whatever you ask me to do is what I will do on your offer to purchase. So I'm not changing. I'm not saying I'll do whatever I want. I'm going to do what you want, but I will still give you my advice. But back to the example, a buyer oftentimes will be in love with a property, and that's a great thing. But sometimes that that love of that property would hinder their ability to negotiate. So oftentimes I'll talk with a buyer and they'll say something like, well, I'm willing to pay full price. In fact, this just happened a couple of weeks ago on a deal where the buyer's like, I'm willing to pay full price. And I said, I think it's worth that. I do, but I also think we can try to get you a little bit less and try to make you a little bit of money. And so we offered a little bit less, and sure enough, the seller came back with a slight counter. But in that case, we saved her $4,000. Not the end of the world, not the super payday of a lifetime, but it still saved $4,000 by just giving advice that I think you can save a little bit here and trying something out. So that's the sort of thing we're going to do for you, and not just on the actual offer, but throughout the deal, because there's going to be other negotiations once we're under contract on repair requests, and the seller might have a situation pop up where they need our approval on something. So I'm going to be there to help you throughout that whole process. All right. But again, like I said, it'll always be your decision on what you want to offer or what you want to do in a situation. I'm just going to give you advice. Okay. Very important that you guys know that I will be your single point of contact. Once we sign a buyer's agency agreement, I am the only person on planet Earth that has your best interest at heart, except for you. All right. So it is my job to help you get what you want out of this deal. And as your single point of contact, you need to know that every for sale by owner is trying to get the best deal for themselves, not for you. No matter what they say, they're not interested in you. And I think we all understand as human beings that once money gets involved, people tend to change. So with a lot of money involved, $300,000, $500,000, I'm just telling you from a lot of experience, you cannot trust people who are on the other side. You just simply can't. So that's what I'm here to do is be your guide. So I'm going to give you guys all my business cards so that you'll have them on you. I'm going to ask you to put those in your purse or your wallet. And if you happen to run into something or a situation where somebody's talking to you, you can just pull out the card, give it to them and say, hey, please call Aaron. I'm interested in talking to you about this, but he said I can't talk to anybody. So I'll give you that business card and you can just hand it to him. All right. If you see new construction, don't talk to the builder without me. They do a very good job being super nice with people, but their entire goal is to help get you to what they want and have you pay them as much money as possible. Okay. So the big idea is just communicate with me. If you're interested in any property, just communicate with me. All right. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. Good deal.
I'm going to have to check out. This is really useful.
Okay.
And I see that you're recording it. So I'll check in on the recording.
Okay. Sounds good.
Good luck finding
Thanks
a house.
All right. All right. So yeah, perfect, Amy. There you go.
And you were very polite.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you did have some family or some heirs, 4 or 5 people, there's a pretty good chance somebody's going to have to duck out or something, And I don't know how long we're going here. We're pretty long already, but usually this is going to take 30 to 45 minutes to kind of get through, typically. The one I did last night took over an hour because it was a nice conversation, a lot of good questions. They were interested in talking more about things, which is great. It's fun to have those. But most of the time it'll take, 30, 40 minutes or so to get through this correctly. You could do it in 5 or 10, but not well. So, because you can kind of get through it, but I really, just like we're doing on this call, I want to talk through the contract. I want to talk about due diligence fee. I want to talk about earnest money. I want to talk about those things with a buyer. All right. So we get to this page and say, all right, guys. So, as your buyer's agent, I'm going to ask you to sign to commit to me to work with you as a buyer's agent so I can work in your best interest. But before we do that, I want you to know that I'm going to sign a pledge of service for you. All right. I'm going to have this hand signed and emailed to you so that you have it on file. And you can trust me to explain all the steps as they happen. I return all your calls and texts promptly. I'll never guarantee I can answer every phone call you send me or every text you send me immediately. I just can't. That's not reality, right? If I'm on a call just like I am with you guys, I can't answer my phone calls right now, but I will call you back as soon as possible. I'm going to act as your connection to all relevant services, all your what we call gold services, insurance people, attorneys, lenders, home inspectors, anybody you need, we'll provide those names for you. I'll provide you any immediate feedback, any phone calls I get about a contract or anything you've got going on. I'm going to provide that back to you as soon as possible. I really believe strongly in this one. I fully represent you and your point of view on all negotiations, like we just talked about. My job is not to get what I want out of the deal. My job is to get what you want out of the deal. So that's why I'm asking you all these questions, trying to find out more about you and your situation, so that when I talk with the other agents, when I'm talking with other sellers, I can talk from your point of view and try to help make sure we're getting the best deal for you. All right. And I'm going to do everything I can to simplify the entire process. I think that's one of the keys to a really good real estate agent is that by the end of the deal, you feel like it was relatively simple, because these deals are not simple. And if I can make it feel like that, then I've done my job. Okay. All right. Yeah. So now I want to talk about the buyer agency agreement. I'm going to pull that up here on the next screen. Do you guys have any questions, or have you signed a buyer agency agreement in the past?
I'm not signing nothing.
You're not signing nothing. Okay. Fair enough. Well, what we can do, Stephen, is I want to go over this with you, and then I can send it to you to review and to read. And then before we get out and see the next property, we can sign it at that point. How does that sound?
I like that. That sounds good.
That sounds good? Okay, good. Yeah, I understand. I mean, look at this form, right? It's ridiculously long and legal. And so I look at these forms every day. I know you don't as a buyer, so I totally get what you're saying there. And, you know, certainly if you have trouble falling asleep, you can read through these documents in full and they will put you to sleep. But I do want to point out a couple little things. And then my policy is that I don't want to force you to sign this today, but I do want to go over it. And then we would have to sign it before we start looking at property, because this is what legally allows me to work in your best interest. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay, good. So the big things on here that you need to know is we would sign a duration from today's date or tomorrow's date through, I usually like to write these out for about a year so that we can be working together. I know this case, it might take 3-4 months, but we'll usually sign them out for a year. The compensation to the firm, we would put in 3% of the purchase price in here. We get that from the seller side. So on our MLS sheet, it's talking about how much they're going to pay a buyer's agent. And so that's where we would get compensated from. So you guys won't ever actually have to pay me. We'll get that through the seller side. If something were to happen a couple months from now and you guys decide not to buy a home anymore, no hard feelings. It's just part of a commission-based business. It happens. And so you won't owe a dime, though, for my work and my effort. I hope that doesn't happen, but, you know, it's no hard feelings if it does. Okay. So by hiring me, essentially, you're getting all of my best work and you won't have to pay for it. Kind of hard to beat, right? Any questions on how that works?
Nope.
Okay. I'm going to give you these forms on the sample offer to purchase, like we were just reviewing a few minutes ago. I'm going to give you a form on questions and answers on home inspections, and the professional services disclosure form as well, which just talks about all the different inspections and attorneys and different people that you'll need. And we'll go over that a little bit later. All right. This next section talks about dual agency, and we're going to have you initial up top here that says that you're authorizing dual agency. What that means is that any property that's listed with my company, Weichert Realtors Unlimited, if we go show you that property, that's dual agency. And so I'm assuming that you want me to show you anything that might fit your needs. And so if we find a property that fits your needs, it happens to be listed by our company, we want the ability to show that property to you. All right. Does that make sense? You good with that?
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, great. Great. All right, that's essentially all there is to the agency agreement. It just simply says I have to work for you and in your best interest. So like I said, Stephen, I'll send that over to you, to all of you. You guys can read through that and see what you think. And if you have any other questions, we can review it then. All right.
Sounds good.
So, okay. So yeah, like we talked about Kristen already, getting you with her as our one of our gold service lenders. If there's anything else as we go through the process, being in the business, we run into the different kinds of people you might need throughout the process as a buyer. And so I'm happy to give you people that I personally work with, people that I use on my own home, and you can use them or not. It's up to you. There are certain people that I would warn you about, just like Wells No-Go. I will warn you, it's still your choice on who you use, but I will say I told you so if you decide to use them. So, you know, just I'll give you my advice on all these different people as we go. All right. So next, I'd like to maybe review a couple properties. Do you guys have maybe another 5 or 10 minutes or so?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I want to review a couple other properties with you here online, and then we can get out there and start looking at homes, all right? So what I want to do now is go ahead and just go over to the MLS and start looking at some property, all right? All right, so we won't do that because there's no point, but that's basically it, right? I mean, that's the idea of trying to get into talk with them a little bit. You know, after this time, I don't know, we're at 50 minutes or something. You know, I even this is a fake interview. I feel like I know what you guys want, right? I feel like I have a good understanding of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and kind of what the next steps are. And hopefully, if you were a normal buyer, you might be more educated at this point about the process. And that's the idea. Is this everything that a buyer needs to know? No, but it's a good kind of general summary, quick little 101 class on buying a home. And that's the main idea. Okay. A couple little things that I hope I did well on that. I'll have to go back and rewatch. But a couple little things that I've learned over the years to do that really are helpful. And it's all about the assumptive closes. Everything's moving forward, right? As your buyer's agent, I'm not asking if you choose to please list with me or if you would like to be working with me as a buyer's agent. I'm not doing that. Yeah, I mean, I want this relationship to work. So as your buyer's agent, here's what we're doing. When you call Kristen and when you go that route, like I'm just assuming, and you're going to have to stop me, like Stephen did with the signing the buyer agency agreement. They'll do that. They'll say, I'm not ready to sign that right now. Yeah, no problem. And just keep flowing forward. But then I'm going to immediately turn that into next time we get together, we'll sign it then. And I'm still just, everything's assuming we're working together because it really does affect the way people think. If you give them doors to open, they're going to wonder which door they should go through. So just go down the doors in the paths that you want them to go, and they will follow you 9 out of 10 times. Okay. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Nope.
Nope.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Eric,
Yeah.
when you're done recording, I was just going to make a comment about something.